Good morning and welcome to ATARC's 2022 Emerging Technology Virtual Summit. For those of you who do not know, my name is Alyssa Cole and I'm the event manager over here at ATARC. And today I have the pleasure of emceeing today's summit. ATARC stands for the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and ATARC is a nonprofit that facilitates collaboration between government, industry, and academia in order to accelerate technology modernization initiatives. They provide ongoing opportunities for cross-agency collaboration through on-site interaction, learning, and market research. Thank you to our partners over at Zoom for helping us to create today's summit. You're truly great partners to us here at ATARC. Additionally, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. We hope that you enjoy this great and informative day. We'd also like to remind you that each of our panels, there will be time for Q&A. Please place all of your questions in the Q&A box on your screen. During these panels, we'll be having our amazing panelists answer these questions. I'd also like to remind you to answer the poll questions throughout the day so that you'll be eligible for your CPE credits. Up first, I'd like to introduce our visionary keynote, Edward Mclarney. Edward is the lead for transformation integration and the AIML, the Enterprise Services and Integration Division, and the Office of the Chief Information Officer over at the National Air, over at NASA. Ed, please take it away.
Thanks a lot, Alyssa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. Well, it's excellent to be here today with everybody. I spent 20 years in the Army, 10 of which were involved in innovation and transformation. And then the last 11 years at NASA, I've been involved with transformation. We have been working for the last several years on an agency-wide, NASA-wide digital transformation initiative to transform our work, our workforce, and our workplace. We've broken that down into several business level transformation targets, like transforming the way that we do our engineering, or the way that we make scientific discoveries, or even the way that we do our governance or our decision making. We've got 6 foundational capabilities that we've been working on to help support those business level transformation targets. Those are the areas of data, model-based approaches, collaboration capabilities, process transformation, culture and workforce, and my area, AI and machine learning. For AI and machine learning, our strategy includes working concrete use cases, making the tools easily available and secure, providing training mechanisms for people to learn about how to apply AI and machine learning to their jobs, growing a vibrant community of kindred spirits in AI and machine learning, and making our data more accessible. So I noted one of our other foundations is data, and we work hand in hand with them. So that's the construct that we're working on at NASA. And for this innovation summit this morning, I thought maybe I could share some personal opinions from 21 and counting years of transformation work, both with the military and at NASA. These are my personal opinions, not the official positions of NASA, but I think they resonate with a lot of the work we do. And hopefully one or more of these points may resonate with each of you. So these things, I think, I don't know, they're core beliefs to me at this point, and I'm happy to share some of them. So first of all, a good plan implemented now or soon beats a fictitious perfect plan implemented late or never. So in the military, we learned that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. On the other hand, having no plan can lead to disaster too. So that's my takeaway is make a good enough plan, learn as you go, and adjust the plan over time. And I think if you wring your hands forever trying to make the perfect plan and accomplish nothing, what good is that? So my takeaway is make a good plan and move out and rock and roll. A corollary to that is in emerging areas like Internet of Things or drones that we're going to hear about later today. Jump in and get started. You'll learn along the way. People will find out just because you're in there mashing around. People will find out you're working in that area, and they'll probably begin turning to you for your help. The data science team I lead at NASA Langley Research Center started this way. The founding leader, my predecessor, noted the need She built a small team, advocated for some resources, and got started. As they jumped into that deep end of the swimming pool, word began to get around, and now we're supporting a variety of customers and partners, both locally and across the agency. And we're actually advocating for creating a NASA-wide data science team within the Chief Information Officer's shop. So jump in and get started is the word there. On a completely orthogonal path, marketing is not a dirty word. So I used to have disdain for marketing, but along the way I've figured out that actually doing outreach, communication, marketing is essential to the job. Doing great transformation work is necessary, but it's not sufficient. And in order to make the best progress, you've got to tell your story, especially in organizations probably like all of ours. Everybody's very busy, their heads down, coloring, working in their lane, and they won't notice transformation work unless you actively get the word out in multiple mechanisms. I've brought on interns to help with this, but my advice is consider making some kind of investment in an outright outreach or marketing person. Another thing that is it's to me it's basic leadership, but it helps with transformation leadership too, is to cultivate your own risk profile and share it with your team members so they know where to take risk and where to avoid it. I try to guide my team members to minimize risk in IT security and in areas of just personal respect and bias, while I encourage them to take as much technical risk as they need in creating inventive solutions for their customers and partners. So I really think as a leader, if you think about your own approach to risk and share that with your team members, you can set them free to do their best work. And if you don't share it, they have to guess what you think about risk, and that's just frustrating for everybody. A couple others: persistence and patience pay off in the area of transformation. And you need to be okay with the idea that the first few times you try something, it might not work out. You can't give up too easily or too soon. Sometimes you got to just hang on to an idea that you think will really succeed, like a bulldog, and keep working to make it happen. Sometimes you might have to put a concept on pause for later revival when its time has come. A related area to that is that pivoting can pay off too. You might start using a new transformative technique to do one thing, learn from it, iterate on that, and then wind up being able to use that same technique for something completely different. I've got an example of that from our local work. Before quarantine, one of our teams has started with an intern project to rate the availability of oversubscribed parking lots. People would drive around for 5 or 10 minutes trying to find a parking spot and be late to their meeting. So we wanted to advise people before they left where the most availability was. Then quarantine came along. The parking need certainly went away because very few people were working on site. And we shifted from detecting cars to detecting people or animals on a drone takeoff and landing area. So I think if we had not started with the parking advisory project, we probably wouldn't have been prepared to help out the folks working on the local drone range. So that making cross discipline connections and getting started and pivoting can help out. I really think also another one is transformation is a high contact team sport. If you've got a small team of true transformation believers, that is awesome, but they cannot transform your overall organization alone. They can serve as a lightning rod to align and catalyze transformation across the organization, though, and that takes many, many conversations at all levels, from grassroots to senior leaders to line managers in the middle and everything in between. At this point, the lesson that I've learned is any given aspect of transformation that you want to push ahead probably will take 3 to 5 times as many conversations as you might have thought just going into it. So be prepared to talk with many people, coordinate with many people, and help bring them along on the transformation journey. The next insight is transformation is about the overall organization and making it thrive. It's not about you. So really work to share credit liberally and highlight transformation leaders or transformation doers organization wide. One of your jobs as a transformation leader is to set the conditions so that many people across the organization can thrive, and you need to celebrate their success. Um, so that can be a big help. And rewards and awards can come in many different forms, some of which are very inexpensive, but still do a lot to help move things ahead. Workforce development. So I really think workforce development is key. I mentioned it as part of our AI machine learning strategy. From an industry conference a few years ago, I picked up the idea that if you want to make a transformation, educate your people and they'll demand the transformation, they'll make it happen. So it's a key element of everything that NASA's doing with our transformation processes. And I really believe it can help. Another thing is, I don't know, it might not be the most popular part, but I think it's really true. And that's that you should consider sunsetting obsolete parts of your ecosystem in order to make way for new elements. And I got a sports metaphor for that. If you're going to run a marathon, you'll probably have to eat right, exercise, get yourself lean and mean. And I really think transformation is kind of a marathon for our organizations. And if so, what do we have to do to get our organizations in shape? Also, I think there are added benefits. Making your IT environment lean and mean can make it easier to integrate new capabilities. It can reduce your IT security threat vectors, and it might have funding payoffs too. So there are multiple great things about sunsetting obsolete elements. Another aspect is to be bold and share your ideas, especially if you're the new transformation agent coming into an organization. I really think far more than not, you'll find one or more kindred spirits if you bring up an idea, and it's far more fun, and you can get far further if you work together with a couple people or a few people, rather than just innovating in a slow, lonely vacuum. Another insight is customers can really think strategically too, and so ask them what they think. For me in the CIO organization, sometimes we've got to be a little bit thick-skinned and receiving the input, but receive their input in open, kind of non-defensive manner. A little story on this: in my early days at NASA, I was working on collaboration systems, and I was really worried to recommend cutting any of the many different collaboration systems that seemed to be blooming all over the place. Then, as I went around talking with people, a couple outspoken and respected early career folks shared with me that what they really wanted was less tools that worked better together and in integrated fashion. And that was really eye-opening to me. They weren't going to complain if we did away with a fringe tool or two. What they really wanted things to work well for them. So they were thinking strategically too, and they were actually, those customers were an early advocate for our enterprise approaches. Let's see, one of my good friends over the years, Tom Soderstrom from JPL, introduced me to the idea of moments of engagement with your customers or partners. And the idea is when any given person approaches you for help, you've got only so much time to take really good care of them. So you got to be both good and timely in how you interact with your customers and partners, whether it's person to person, or I know we're talking later today about AI in the loop for customer and interaction. So people or AIs need to take good care of the customers. Another couple quick ones, and I know it's almost time to get off stage, but have fun. I really take transformation seriously, and I think the team and I laugh at least once or more times on any given day. And then the last short mention is you are not alone. This stuff is challenging, sometimes frustrating, and ultimately rewarding. My advice is find your fellow true believers and work together to create the tomorrow you envision. Those are my comments. I hope everybody has a wonderful time discussing drones, Internet of Things, and conversational AI for customer experiences. And it's readily apparent to me how all three of those fit together and support one another. So it's a great docket you've got lined up, Alyssa. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with everybody today.
Great. Thank you so much, Ed. That was a lot of great content. Up next, we're going to hear from our Tech Talk for today. We're going to be hearing from Prakash Yarlagadda. Prakash is the founder and CEO over at Node Digital LLC. Prakash, please take it away.
Thank you, Alyssa. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Hopefully you can see the slides too. So very quickly, I'm Prakash Yarlagadda from Node Digital. I'm the founder CEO. We're a small business focused in the AI ML space. We started on the commercial space, but in the last year and a half or so, we've been supporting federal at IRS and DHS, among other customers. Very quickly, if you think about why conversational AI for customer experience, you've probably heard of the presidential executive order from last year about transforming customer experience. And if you think about it, we live in a world where it's all about instant gratification. I think Mr. Edwards said it properly, right? Moments of engagement. So we want to be able to capture those moments of engagement and provide those self-service capabilities in the channel that the customer or the citizen is in. So they could be on the phone, they could be on the web, they could be on in social media, Instagram or Facebook, right? Or they could be interacting with their smart home device. So we want to be able to provide and resolve that issue for them instantaneously and in the channel they're in. And advances in AI, machine learning, and other technologies and messaging technologies, both in the personal space and in the enterprise space, have really made it possible for conversational AI to be at the forefront of that customer experience and automation. Even from an interesting stat is from a Big Four perspective, there's over 3 billion monthly active users across all of just the Big Four messaging platforms. That gives you an idea of the scale. In terms of adoption too, it's massively picked up. These are commercial numbers, but at least it shows you how quickly the growth is and how the different CIOs are adopting conversational AI. Before we jump into virtual agents, one distinction I would like to point out is the difference between a chatbot and a virtual agent. Most often you see people mix both of them. So the chatbot is more rule-based, so it's very linear, it's very structured in terms of how they answer a question. While as conversational AI and virtual agents are more natural, they try to understand the input. So I could, for example, be asking a question about, can you give me an estimate for a car or a home insurance? So I have two separate questions in one question, right? So being able to understand that, being able to understand slang, spelling mistakes, spelling typos, or being able to understand the language they're in, right? All these make a massive difference between how that conversational experience is going to be for the customers. So that's where the virtual agents kick in, right? They have short-term memory. So if you've collected a billing address and later in the conversation, if you need to ship, the virtual agent should be smart enough to go and say, hey, is this the address you want to use for shipping, instead of the customer typing everything again. And they have to be able to continuously learn. So the key difference is the chatbots talk to you, while the virtual agents, you actually talk with you and have an interaction and make that customer experience that much more richer. Typically, you will see three kinds of use cases We're not going to touch on the sales side, but they are a great sales enabler. So if you've used in your personal life social media, you'll see these videos come in with, buy this product or little things that pop up. But that's on the sales side. But virtual agents also help you from a service and support perspective, from taking your internal knowledge and making it available to the customers. And they all come with the benefits of virtual agent, right? Being able to scale, self-service capability, and be very cost effective. Most well-run customer contact centers, as an example, have approximately $4 and above in terms of the per interaction cost. With a virtual agent, that really pops down to like $1.20 or $1.40. So it's a 3x, 4x return on investment, right? And you're improving your customer satisfaction at the same time as well. In terms of the conversational AI too, it's a journey. I mean, and it's about, again, I'm going to steal from Mr. Edward. Is it a good enough plan, right? It starts with that. Do you have the basic informational type of activities covered? It doesn't mean that the breadth is small. I mean, the scope is still wide, but you start with providing quick information to the customers coming in, right? And then you start optimizing your intents. And intent is nothing but a customer desire to accomplish something. So you start in the informational phase, and then you start getting into transactional, where you authenticate the user. I'd like to move money, or I would like to apply for a loan. Anything that's, if it's IRS, I'd like to get a copy of my tax returns, where you start interacting. And on the back end, you start interacting through APIs. So if you have your enterprise systems to collect that information and also perform the transaction, you do that. If you have bots, like robotic process automation bots on the back end that you've already built, you can invoke those and create a very powerful synergy between the customer experience using the virtual agents and the RPA process bots on the back end. So it's very transactional, and as you go through the journey, and as the solution matures, you get into the transformational side, where the bot or the virtual agent is now actually an advisor. You get concierge services. So if you have an onboarding virtual agent, it's sending you reminders. Have you finished your training? And if you are in a multi-agency environment, or wherein you have several bots, some of the newer platforms, you can actually have the virtual agents talk to each other too. So I could be talking to, for example, Mint, and inquiring about, the publication of a bill or a coin, right? At the same time, you realize you have a query on a tax-related information, and the bots are talking to each other on the back end, and they can tell you, oh, I'm not the right person, or right virtual agent. Here's and hand off the customer seamlessly to the other virtual agent. So the journey and the digital transformation at that point, it's really changing how you do your business as well. So you have to embark on that journey to go through. There's many conversational platforms out there, and you want to go through, understand your scenarios. You want to build out the criteria that's important for you. But I've listed a few in terms of what we see in terms of the top conversational platforms, being able to enable virtual agents across multiple channels, being multilingual, and more importantly, being able to scale to thousands of intents and maintain a high resolution rate of 90%. So it's important that happens too. The good ones are also secure, so they're GDPR compliant, have encryption at rest and flight. They love data masking. So as you go through that through the conversational journey, you'll realize that at the transformational phase, you're collecting a lot of information that you probably want to mask and secure and have audit controls on. So a number of factors go into the technology stack that you would need to put out that best customer experience you want to. I have a couple of examples that we've built out. So for example, what I'm showing you is a virtual agent that's more on the sales side. We've built for Lab Cities in Singapore, where in a brick and mortar store, so can take in orders through a virtual agent, process them, and basically ask the customer if they want to pick it up on their way home or get it delivered through DoorDash, and then actually pay for it. So all in the channel that the customer is in. So they could be on Instagram, they could be on Facebook or on the website, right? So I think this one is on the Facebook webpage for the brand. So very quickly, I'll show you that, and then I'll show you one from IRS, so just so you can understand how powerful these experiences can be. So they're inquiring about products. They're understanding, the virtual agent actually recommends a product. It's a very natural conversation that they're having. They can add it to a cart, they can buy. So you can see that, right? It's a very natural conversation that they're having. We built something similar for customer support for IRS too, as part of their mobile pilot. It's actually a mobile app that also has augmented reality and chat, and it allows them to answer queries, and it works on Alexa, it works on all these different channels, web, mobile, all of them. The app also recognizes forms, and so we have an AI machine learning model that picks up the forms from the IRS public site. For example, recognizes if it's a 1040 or not, and then enables the chat side and the informational side of that particular form, so they can answer queries, create a metaverse in this case. And this chat is virtual agent is embedded in the app. So that's really what I have to share. If you need additional info or need to learn, there's much more in terms of best practices. We're more than happy to jump in and help.
Great. Thank you so much, Prakash. That was a great presentation. Up next, we're going to hear from our first panel of the day. For this panel, we have Kirsten Patton moderating. So Kirsten, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Alyssa. Before we begin, I just want to encourage our audience to please interact with us as much as you would like and submit questions of your own in the Q&A section of this platform. And also remember, if you would like to receive CPE credits for attending today's event, be sure to answer the poll questions as they come up throughout today's discussion. And if our panelists for this panel discussion could please come on camera, I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves. Please share with us who you are, what organization you're with, what role you have there. And Stephen, I believe that you would like to kick us off. If there's anything else you'd like to share with our audience, now would be the time.
Well, fantastic. I really want to thank everyone for being here today. Kirsten, thank you for that introduction. And ATARC, as always, is really at the cutting edge of where things are. We're thrilled today to be able to bring you some, as we're talking about drones, to bring you some live drone footage. And, if we think about what drones are being used for today across the federal government, state and local governments are as well. We're thinking about public safety, police, fire, wildfire. We're thinking about field operations. We're thinking about securing a federal campus or a military installation. We're thinking about infrastructure inspection. We're thinking about any kind of investigations. Whether it's NTSB or the FAA or the Department of Transportation. After something happens, so often it's vital to get on the ground and see what's going on. If imagine all of you on the line today, we are making some kind of an investigation, or we're trying to understand who's in that car or truck that we're seeing on the highway or on the roadway there. Now, this is deep from the Florida Everglades, live footage, I want to add. So we could say to Paul Nurkala, who's some of you may know, he's actually a renowned drone pilot, and just want to thank him for participating in this. And I also want to recognize our collaboration partner, Agile Technologies, and they are providing the data. This is in a pretty rural area of Florida where there is no ordinary LTE footage, and yet we're able, all of us, to see these live scenes. Quite remarkable. So, when I just want to really let people know, and again, this is live. If someone wants in the Q&A to ask for a specific direction for our pilot to take, we can try to honor that and go to that specific place. So if you want to do that, just to show that this is live footage, we're happy to bring that in. So I really want to, again, thank folks here today on behalf of Zoom and ATAR for having me. I want to kind of kick off the panel here and really say, when we're talking about drones in the federal mission, right, we're talking about collaborating on images. And so often it's very easy to get someone to the scene, but hard to get an expert to the scene. So where we can get those images on a scene, especially when we're talking about a drone, if it were to fall down or there's some issue, or someone doesn't want that drone to be in the thing, or you think about a police response where someone may be antagonistic to the drone. These are all opportunities where no one, can the drone find any alligators? Well, maybe behind the, in the swamp area here in the Everglades, we can try to see if we can find some. So thanks, John, for bringing that up. But, really want to talk about the importance of collaboration. So imagine that this were an emergency response scenario. How easy or hard would it be to bring all of us here today into this specific location, looking for a lost alligator as part of some kind of Park Service effort to track these incredible species. So it'd be very hard to bring a series of botanists or wildlife experts or what have you, but easier certainly to bring a drone into that environment. And then the important thing to remember, and this is something that we all sort of learned through the pandemic, is we don't need to be there in person to collaborate. And the collaboration, and again, this is all live, right? So the weak signals, because we're where there is no signal, and want to again recognize our friends at Agile who are able to bring this to us in 4K. And I believe they're using a satellite connection to do that, so even more remarkable. And I believe that satellite connection is offered by Fairwinds Technologies. The power of being able to, in real time, collaborate on these types of images. Again, is it a drone of a parkland? Is it a campus that we want to defend the perimeter of in a federal installation? Is it a traffic accident reconstruction or investigation? These are all scenarios where we now have the ability to get incredible visual, to be part of the scene, to get incredible visual elements to really support that federal mission and bring it into the collaboration that would be so hard to do in person. And I think all of us can take a minute to just recognize the diversity of needs for this type of video-enabled collaboration, where you have someone on the front line who has information, or maybe there's someone here in the audience who is a subject matter expert who can provide information to those first responders in the field. So there's many different reasons and two ways why we would want to have the interaction with the field and have that. And now we're able to, and I think we learned through the pandemic, as I just mentioned, that we don't all need to be in the same place, and that we can get all of this information and process it. And certainly the ability to do that live is what's really compelling. So I really just want to say, thank you to being here, and I'm so excited to be on this panel today as we continue the conversation. Looking forward to all the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. That was a great way to set the stage for the conversation. And next, I would love to hear from Catherine. If you could please introduce yourself, Catherine.
Hi, good morning. I'm Catherine Gagne. I'm with the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB. We are a federal agency. We're independent, and we investigate multi-modes of transportation accidents. So that includes U.S. civil aviation accidents, highway accidents, marine, pipeline, and railroad. As an investigative agency, site documentation has always been part of our process and traditionally done with cameras. But in 2016, our agency started moving into use of UAS to document accident sites. And us being a federal agency and UAS being technically aircraft, that meant that we had to have a compliant federal agency flight department, just like you would have for manned aircraft, but we scaled it down to be appropriate for UAS operations. But we have standard operating procedures manual, training manual, flight ops manual, dispatch, SMS. It's run very much like a flight department. When we initiated the program back in 2016, we knew, given that a drone carries a camera, a very good camera that we can place precisely, we knew to expect that we would get high quality accident site documentation and some efficiency where we can place the drone in areas that it may not be safe for an investigator to go right away, and get some imagery, immediately and allow the investigator to see those images as we're getting them. So still photography, video imagery, orthomosaics. We use photogrammetry software to process for orthomosaics, so we can do accident site measurements digitally, which we used to do manually. It increases our efficiency on the scene. We knew to expect those kind of benefits. What has come as a surprise are some of the innovative use cases that we've encountered over the years, especially with the 3D modeling. One example is we captured and developed a very detailed topography of a sloping roadway that was used to support the investigation of a fatal limousine accident in Schoharie, New York. In one accident where it involved a helicopter that was flying over featureless terrain at night in Arizona, the investigator suspected that with the terrain and the lighting conditions that the pilot may have had some visual illusions and not been aware that the terrain was rising beneath the helicopter. Because we had ADS-B data from the accident aircraft that we knew its position all the way to the ground, we were able to take that data, program it into our drones, and have the drone fly the same profile in similar lighting conditions. We have a night waiver, and shoot video so that to enable the investigator to visualize, whether his theory, seemed like something that might pan out. And probably my favorite use case that we had involved the 3D modeling of a hangar during the investigation of an aircraft accident in Ypsilanti, Michigan. And this was a Boeing MD-83 that went off the end of the runway with 116 people on board. Everybody survived with one minor injury. But what was interesting is the drone imagery captured a 3D model of a hangar that this aircraft had been parked near. And this became instrumental as part of a computational fluid dynamics wind study that was used in the analysis of what happened to the airplane and to jam its flight controls before takeoff. So we just keep finding new use cases for the drones. Currently, we have 5 pilots and 7 aircraft. All of our pilots, myself included, it's an ancillary duty. We have day jobs with the NTSB, and we are incorporating the drone work on the side. But the program has proven its worth, and we're looking to expand it. And so that's where we are in a nutshell.
Great, thank you for sharing that with us. And Paul, I think this is so cool what you're able to share on your screen, but it is your turn to introduce yourself now.
Oh, I didn't realize I was having a speaking role here, but I'm proud to be a part of it. I'll switch over to my thing, have my partner land the drone for me. Yeah, really excited to be a part of this. I've been working with Steven and Zoom for a number of years now, almost, and so I'm proud to be a part of the discussion. I come from a background of drone racing, so I learned drone racing by competing in the Drone Racing League. It's a TV show on NBC. Became the 2018 world champion of that, and then since then I've found ways to kind of integrate my passion and my skills in the drone world into whether that's cinematography, flying for feature films or commercials, national commercials, or finding ways to collaborate with guys like Steven and Zoom to showcase the power of drone technology in unexpected ways. I think it's fun to see how you can take these kinds of technologies and use them in the spirit of collaboration, ways that allow you to do stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So a lot of my special interest in drones is about how to precisely operate them. We have, like, for example, racing drones here that we can take into the woods and be able to quickly navigate through the woods here and potentially use that as a search and rescue case, or to locate something, or however you want to look at it. So just excited to be a part of the discussion and showcase the power of drones in all of their different facets. So but I'd be happy to answer any questions about UAV technology of any kind.
Thank you for that. Did we find any alligators, or are they all sleeping?
We did not find an alligator. I did find a duck, and then coincidentally a jet skier. I didn't expect there to be somebody running a jet ski down there, but there was, and gosh, so.
That's great. Thank you. So back to my questions. We talked a lot about the purpose that drones will bring, the usage that they have in the federal government. If there's anything you guys want to add on to that, you may. But my next question was actually going to be around some of the challenges when it comes to implementation or usage of drones. Is it educational and awareness, or is there legal concerns? Anything that Catherine or Stephen or Paul would like to speak to? I'd love to cover some of those challenges.
Well, yeah, I think one of the misconceptions, and as Paul continues flying and sharing these incredible scenes, really appreciate that. The perception is you need millions of dollars, DoD budgets, in order to do some of the different activities that we've been able to see today. And really the answer to that is we don't. We're able to do these types of activities on budgets that make sense across the civilian mission space. So I think one of the concerns that people have is, well, I'd love to have drone footage and be able to capture something live or collaborate on that, or maybe not necessarily live, but find some way to work that into my mission, because I need to have this video information. But I just, I don't have the budget. I think that's one of the misconceptions, and hopefully, we can dispel that. And I think the second answer, the second part of the question might be is, how can this really meaningfully help my mission? And I think one of the areas there is to dispel is to experience it. We've seen right now, we're able to see much more of what's going on in this place in the Everglades than we would have otherwise been able to do if we were there on the ground. So I think that's part of the misconception.
Absolutely. Catherine, do you have anything to add to that?
I think some of the educational challenges for us early on were just as socializing it within the agency. Back in 2016, there wasn't a really good understanding of what a powerful investigative tool this is. To supplement our investigations. I think people thought that, maybe it's a couple of guys that wants to, start an RC flying club, or that, all it can do is take pictures and video. And we really had to prove the use case scenarios to get the management, buy-in and acceptance of the program. And of course, it helped being a federal flight department and operating under the constraints we do as the NTSB. We don't have the same security and privacy constraints that a DoD operator would have. We're an entirely transparent public agency. Our investigations have always been that way. So anything we gather with the drone is in our public docket anyway and available. But we're very careful about what we shoot due to privacy concerns, knowing that, what we capture, we release. But it was most of it was getting folks to understand what a powerful tool this is.
We have an audience question from Josh Morden. He asks, how do you overcome these privacy and security constraints with the use of new technologies as drones? So I guess we just touched on that, but Stephen, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, no, everyone in the community, and I want to really recognize, obviously, Catherine and everything that her agency's been doing, but I would say across the federal government, as someone who's been supporting your missions for 20 years or so, privacy is a very important thing for the federal government to respect citizen privacy. Is typically in sort of an irrevocable commitment and the first part of a program. So I think it is, and it really, that's why we're seeing that question come up. I think the value there, imagine here we have let's say this person was in distress and needed help that we're just seeing. The value of a situation is there are those times where it's a police response and you need to have the video footage. And so maybe in those times, you would go through a court process to understand, the warrants and et cetera. In a search and rescue, that would be different. Someone wants to be found and such and so on. But in other areas where this is being captured, I think that's where we can really lean on industry to support the mission of government with AI tools to blur out images or faces and such visual artifacts, license plates. These things can be done in camera on the or on the network, and so that there isn't that concern to have the visual information, but using AI at the tactical edge to be able to help drive privacy in those types of ways. I think the importance is to be open-minded to the mission need, and then building that mission out with privacy as a critical foundation.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Let's go ahead and pop up our first poll question. I think we'll go ahead and do two back to back, but the first poll question is, how important do you think drone usage will biome in the federal government? I think that was supposed to be become in the federal government. Just go ahead and rank, the importance real quickly. And then the second one we can pop up whenever we have enough responses is around safety. So do you think drones are going to be safe in the government project? So this poll question is actually interesting to me. I'm going to ask Stephen and Catherine, are there any safety issues that you've heard people express, or maybe just reliability issues? And if so, how have those issues been addressed over the years?
This is Paul, the drone pilot. I'm just letting you guys know that the guy in blue is part of our team. It's not just some random person we're chasing around in the woods. We're kind of just using him to showcase that we can, go into the woods and locate him easily.
Right.
I
His
just want
privacy is fully respected.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's a simulation. He's an actor, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have footage that you're gonna have to submit to crime reports. Anyways.
No, I mean, I think these are the questions. In my opinion, the beauty of the drone is that the focus is on human safety, in the sense that we don't have to bring people into these environments. I know that there was a need and a federal response in not too far away from the Florida Everglades area where we are. A different part of the Everglades was part of a FBI search for a wanted fugitive. Obviously, that person was considered armed and dangerous. And so to the extent that drones were being used, and they were being used pretty regularly, in addition to other types of aircraft, we're able to be in harm's way and not have our first responders in harm's way. So I think when we're looking at safety, I would say that's really one of the major ways that drones can provide safety. Obviously, also being in the sky, it's going to be harder for them to in this, injure someone who's a bystander. So I think that's going to be, how safety can really figure into a drone policy for an agency.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And reliability, is there anything on reliability you would like to speak to?
So I think that's where we see our, I really want to recognize Agile Interop Technologies here and Fairwinds Technologies. These are two companies that are working together to provide the images that we're able to see. And that's coming in, and they're doing this also together in tactical military environments, in places that we can't even discuss in a forum like this. And they're able to do that by bringing data to where there is none. Paul is in a very rural area right now, and if it weren't for satellite connectivity, Fairwinds, and being able to connect all of this gear into ad hoc network on the fly at the edge to provide this type of visual imagery, this is a critical part of reliability, to be able to bring the information in areas where there is no data today.
Catherine, what about at NTSB? Were there any conversations around safety or reliability that you've seen?
Yeah, we've been managing our safety procedurally. We know this, and reliability wise, these are consumer off the shelf products that we're flying. So these are not, airworthiness certificated aircraft that, we're, as pilots, we're used to dealing with. So we temper our expectations of these things along those lines. And so procedurally, we don't fly over people. We don't fly over roads. If we've, programmed an automated mission and we see it kind of creeping over, we'll abort it, come back, redraw it and start again. Just knowing that, for us, and in a federal flight program, we're used to aviation maintenance, we're used to tracking, and for these little consumer off-the-shelf electronics, the best we can do is track our battery cycles, track the time on the rotors, and come up with our own policies on replacement of these parts, because it's developed as you go along. There have been times when I've been operating that I'm like, boy, I'm glad we're so strict with our procedures, because if we hadn't been so diligent, things could have gotten ugly. And we have pilot currency requirements. We practice using our automated apps. We practice quickly pulling the aircraft out of the automated flight, flying it in ADDI, so that we're prepared that when a lost communication or any kind of glitch or something goes on, we're prepared to immediately know what to do to handle it and punch that drone out of there. And it's definitely, our procedures have saved property on more than one occasion with me personally. So
Absolutely.
So then let's talk about the future of drones in the government. Where do you see this 5-10 years from now?
I think from my experience, what I've seen in terms of how this is moving forward, there's two major areas. I would say, first of all, as drones and 5G become more prevalent in the consumer space, then there's going to be a regulatory envelope that has to happen. If people are getting packages and from next day, online commerce delivered via drones, that's going to, really start filling the skies. So there's going to be a lot of regulatory work certainly coming in the future at those types of areas. But I think what we are going to see is more and more use cases where there's inspection, investigation, all kinds of field work will have a drone component. And I think we'll see a lot more on the law enforcement side, because our communities want to have transparency and visibility into what's kind of going on. Maybe that has to happen after the fact or not. But I think really looking at providing an understanding of what exactly is going on as a road's being built or police operations underway, to the extent that these images can be provided to the public, maybe afterwards, after a certain time and in disclosure, but just so that there's an assurance of transparency and forthrightness. I think that's going to be very strong. I also see much more in the way of being able to do a lot of the work of the federal government that's inspection and regulatory in nature. If we're looking at the effects of a climate, if we're looking at lake levels, if we're looking at streams, we want to follow wildlife, all of those things today that are at the very edge of our data range, though that I think the future is really going to come in that area. And I think we'll also see sort of the first line response to a situation will frequently be a drone that's in the air is able to get there immediately, and as the first responders come a few minutes later. So I think those are going to be kind of some of the areas in the near term. I'm not really even speaking 5 years away, but really in the next 12 to 36 months.
Great. And Catherine, what is your take on the future of drones for the federal government?
Our agency is increasingly on board. And so, as I mentioned in my introduction, we're looking to expand to have, more pilots in the agency and more drones so that we can respond to more of our accident scenes with them. Right now, are they value added at this particular scene? And part of it is anybody available? Since we're all doing this on the side, we haven't been able to yet really formalize a rotation of who's available. It's kind of like, oh gosh, okay, we've had a crash. We'd like to have a drone. Let's see who might be able to go. So we do plan to expand and formalize, and our chair just, testified before the House Transportation Subcommittee just a few weeks ago with our reauthorization proposal, and there is a line item in there for more drones. So if we get the funding, we get more aircraft, and we'll just continue to expand.
Great. And we have an audience question about how many hours do you spend on flight training?
Oh, for us, we have I should know this off the top of my head. We have a minimum requirement, and we've all to even ask to participate in the program, you got to go get your 107. And there's I think the minimum flight hours to come into the program is 10. Then it's training per our training manual, and it's all mission based and evaluated by our program lead. And so it's almost like a checkout flight like you would have in a regular flight department. And I think our currency requirements, once you've demonstrated mission work, have tagged along on a few missions on accident sites, and done a few, our currency requirements are 60 minutes within every 90 days. And we have, we want to make sure we're practicing using our automated apps, hand flying in ADDI mode, punching it out of an app, to take manual control of it. So it's not a ton of flight time, but it is very precise, documented procedures that we redo over and over and over.
Great, thank you. Go ahead,
and I
Steve.
think, in terms of, there's two other answers I think you could say is, obviously, where Catherine's looking at, they want pilots who fulfill a regulatory mission and have specific training in those areas. Very, very important. I think we're going to see more and more as a career of, that sort of thing. We're, to get to the level where Paul is able to go around a tree and not smash his drone, we saw him go into a car. These are not sort of things that you can do after an hour with a hobbyist drone. But I think we're also seeing automation, and we're already seeing drones that where you're able to say, I want the drone to go to this area. I want it to hover over here for some amount of time. I want it to do X, Y, or Z. And we're going to see more and more of that. So we'll have the pilots will be doing sort of the hardest efforts that need to be done. And for things that if you have routine images over a specific area that could be, hover over something, that could be done in an automated way.
Excellent, thank you. So let's pop up our third and final poll question real quick. And we will have our audience answer that. Don't forget, if you want your CP credits to respond, when do you think drone usage will be practiced and safe enough for widespread government use? And we are just about out of time, but I want our audience to, close us out here. So if there's anything that, hasn't been said yet that you'd like to leave our audience with, I will turn it over to Stephen first, and then we'll hear from Catherine. And Paul, if you have anything you'd like to add, over to you too.
Sure. So again, thanks again for having us. And Zoom is really, really proud to be able to provide these images. And if you wanted to see the drone in a larger format, you can pin it and it'll be the primary. Some of you have already been doing that and have been letting me know in the comments. So thanks for that. And you can see the value of collaboration. So we really want to thank ATARC for inviting us and including us. We are so excited about the future of collaboration over drones. I think that's a very, very powerful thing. And to be able to go into areas where too often the types of drone footage that's needed isn't, midday sun in an urban area. So frequently you're going way out into areas to do different things, wildfire, search and rescue, where you don't have data. And we want to lean on, and we do lean on our collaboration, mission collaborators, Agile and Fairwinds. I want to thank them as well. And just really honored to have been part of this conversation and to be with you all, seeing these images live from the Everglades.
Very cool, thank you. And then over to you, Catherine.
I don't think I have much to add to that. I really appreciate you inviting me to discuss the program that we have at NTSB. We find it valuable, and we're committed to continuing and finding new uses for the drones in our accident investigations.
Great, thank you for joining us. And Paul, do you have anything you'd like to say before we go? I keep putting him on.
Hey, sorry, yeah, I've got to switch over from drone mode. I apologize. No, I'm again really proud to be able to showcase the power of drones and what I think they can do to support ongoing missions like the NTSB and everything else that combinations with Agile and Fairwinds and Zoom and stuff like that can provide. So I'm stoked to have been invited, and I'm glad to be able to show you what these things can do.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun. We should have that on every panel. All right, we are done here. So I'm going to pass it back to Alyssa Cole.
Great. Thank you guys so much for that great panel. Up next, we're going to hear from our last panel of the day. For this one, we have the pleasure of having Jory Heckman moderate. So Jory, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Alyssa, and thanks everyone for tuning in for the final panel of the day on IoT. And before we begin, I just do want to take care of the housekeeping items here. Please do continue to respond to these poll questions. We're going to have 2 of them throughout the conversation. Again, just want to make sure you get your CPE credits. We have a great lineup to be talking about the topic here. And everyone, if you just please give a little virtual wave as I introduce you. We have Stacy Bosjanek, the Chief of Information and Policy and the Deputy Chief Information Officer for Cybersecurity over at the Defense Department. We have James Rod, the Cloud Broker and Cloud Portfolio Manager for the Cloud PMO at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And we've got Tom Yerswa, the Enterprise Strategy Lead in the Information Technology Resources Branch at the National Center for Advancing Translational Services over at the National Institutes of Health. Everyone, thanks for joining me.
Great
and I think just to have everyone introduce themselves more fully, I'm just going to tee up a pretty basic question here, but a pretty exciting one in terms of the current state of IoT, Internet of Things devices. What are the current use cases that you're most excited about? Tim, I'll toss it over to you first.
Sure. Thanks, Rory. So, at NCATS, which is the Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, we focus on drug discovery, development, and dissemination. And so what we're really using IoT for is to, create ecosystems of automated instruments where we can generates massive amounts of data with regards to biological profiles, chemical properties, and data analysis surrounding those sort of assays so that we can help discover drugs and get treatments to patients more quickly.
Okay, and Stacy, over to you. What are the use cases of IoT that are most exciting to you?
Well, I think my office is focused on helping secure the DIB against exfiltration of data. So those types of things where we can use that capability to help strengthen our security across the board is where we are looking for advancement.
Okay, great. And James, over to you. Over at FEMA, what are the IoT use cases that are the ones that you are most excited about?
Well, obviously, by our mission, we are required to respond to disasters. So anything that can help us do that faster and with less of a logistical impact is always preferential to us. So as devices get smaller, yet have more capability and more data, we are very happy about that. I would say that our greatest asset as far as our intent to fully utilize IoT would be for the dissemination of data in response to disasters.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for everyone for kind of teeing up the rest of the conversation here. I think a very logical place to kind of get started here is just recognizing the infrastructure needed to enable and empower IoT, whether that's a cloud infrastructure or whether you're looking over the horizon, 5G seems to be a real enabler of IoT. I'll throw it to whoever wants to pick this up here, but what do you see as the infrastructure that's necessary to enable IoT and really kick it into the next gear?
So I can go ahead and take this. So at NCATS we have not only the cloud infrastructure to handle all of the data ingestion and analysis, but we actually have a pretty neat ecosystem of actual instruments and devices to actually conduct the experiments that end up producing the data. So at NCATS, we have sort of a combination of, not only the smart devices and instruments, but also the cloud infrastructure to handle that, big data analysis that comes off of those instruments and devices.
Okay, anyone else want to take a crack at that? James?
Yeah, we utilize it pretty much the same way as well. We require, we have something that we call Firstnet. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with that, but it is a communication network provided through the infrastructure of AT&T. And it's targeted specifically towards first responders and the like. And it's supposed to be, well, it is more reliable, secure. I get signal on Firstnet in garages where my T-Mobile personal phone has no hope of working. So, the utilization of being able to have a robust network like that can handle communications for all of these devices is critical to what we do as well.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's a great point to kind of foot stomp, is just the rugged terrain in which some of these IoT devices are deployed, out on the edge, having the connectivity so that they are able to, beam that data, elsewhere where that data is being parsed and being put to good use. Stacy, as far as the infrastructure piece of things, anything you'd like to add there?
Well, I think, the investment in the secure infrastructure, right? So for us, everything is about the security. We need to be able to utilize the capabilities that this new burgeoning area brings us, right? And give those capabilities to our warfighter, but we have to make sure that they're secure and that we maintain our military superiority as we go forward.
Okay, well, I guess it's probably a good time to throw the first poll question to the audience here. Alyssa, if you could just get that ready for everyone, please. How secure do you believe the smart devices at your agency are? I think we're still waiting for those answers to come in. There we go. Looks like 49% say moderately safe, 24% say very safe. Those are encouraging numbers, I think. And since this is a conversation that is, I think, equal parts, opportunities of IoT, but also, the challenges and the security implications of IoT. Stacy, it seems like a natural place for you to kind of jump in here, just in terms of the added attack surface, the extra security implications of IoT. What should agencies be mindful of when it comes to fielding this kind of technology?
Well, the avenues and the vulnerabilities for attack, right? And I think one of the things that we're working on hard in DoD is providing those standards that should be met to at least meet the minimum security level to protect ourselves from our adversaries. Because as everybody hopefully is aware, with the CISA's recent Shields Up information that's gone out, that we're being attacked, and we're being attacked on a daily basis, probably a minute by minute basis, by our adversaries trying to get ahead of us. So, one of the things that we have to make sure of as we use these new and innovative ideas is that we can also protect them and ensure that we keep our advantage.
Okay, great. And James, Tim, any thoughts on the the security implications of IoT and just making sure that it's protected from malicious actors, really?
Yeah, so our institute was actually recently formed in 2012, so it's actually relatively new, and we actually did not even get large enough to where we had a need to stand up a cybersecurity division until about 2019, just right before the pandemic. So they've been very busy developing a framework for IoT and cybersecurity in general. And so we've been working with them to sort of come up with, a governance plan with regards to sort of balancing, because, we're, at NCATS, we're sort of on the innovative side, and, we're sort of driving constantly driving for new developments and drug discovery. So it's definitely a balancing act between, using the latest technologies, but also making sure they're secure at the same time.
Okay, great. And we were talking about CISA a moment ago, James, another very valuable component of the DHS family. Are there conversations or notes being shared between FEMA and CISA on the
Always.
security of IoT?
Yeah, security is a massive concern for us. Obviously, responding to emergencies, the last thing we want to happen is some kind of a security attack that would prevent us from doing that. So that is always upfront in our mind. We meet with CISA regularly, or I would say our CISO does, our chief of security. Obviously, we have all of the active scanning tools and everything like that anybody needs, but in my opinion, one of the most critical things that we tend to not pay enough attention to is your baseline updates and stuff like that. Like just making sure that your mobile devices are updated to the latest firmware, that you're aware of any security weaknesses that were discovered either by white hat hackers or the individual companies, or even black hat, and they've now done something to address the issue. Basic systemic and network maintenance is a critical tool beyond the fancy software and firewalls and VPNs and all the other kind of stuff we utilize as well. So that's something we try to stress here at FEMA. We have very severe requirements for keeping everything updated.
Excellent. Thank you for that, James. I actually want to flip the conversation or the question on its head a little bit here, because we were talking about the securing IoT devices. But Stacy, I think in your opening comments here, you also reflected on how IoT might be a tool in the toolbox here to enable cybersecurity. Just tell me a little bit more about that vector of things.
Well, I think, as we identify vulnerabilities and places where we can be attacked, Internet of Things helps us find the answers to those, right? Because once you identify them and figure out where your vulnerabilities are, that's the path to fix them. Now, we all know, though, as soon as we fix one, another one opens up. So we have to stay ever vigilant and on our toes constantly to make sure that we cover ourselves.
Okay, great. And, one other thing that occurs to me here, obviously, this is, a way to have more eyes on the issue of cybersecurity, just recognizing that it can be a force multiplier for, a finite workforce, a workforce that, does need to sleep and go home at some point. But I imagine automation also kind of fits neatly into this conversation. These sensors are very good at beaming just a treasure trove of data to agencies, but how they can actually make use of that data, actually parse it and do something valuable with it, that seems to be where the automation comes in. Stacy, I see you vigorously nodding your head there. Do you want to keep going on with that thread here?
Well, so it is interesting because, China has a treasure trove of people who can go through all the data, but we don't. And so that's one of the things. Now, here in the United States, we also have to be very careful, right? We can't just consume all data. We have to make sure that it's pertinent and appropriate, and we protect everyone's civil liberties as we go through it. So, these kinds of things can help us be aware and have data on what we need, but we also have to be very vigilant and responsible with the type of data that we gather and keep for our efforts. But yes, I think it would be perfect. I think it would be very interesting and would be useful to be able to gather and have the automation help us get through that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
It's not judgmental, right? So you could probably set it up to where you could protect everybody's civil liberties, but garner the information that's pertinent to our safety and security.
Right. Some important guardrails there. Tim, you were describing IoT use cases, I would say almost in like a clinical situation, or, that use case being more kind of, based on the mission here. Just tell me where automation fits into those use cases of IoT.
Yeah, so I mean, from a clinical perspective, we actually do both preclinical and clinical at NCATS, but from a clinical perspective, you can gather all sorts of health metrics from heart rates or insulin levels, things like that. And speaking to what Stacy was talking about as well, you do need to sort of anonymize that data as well, because that data in the wrong hands can definitely be very dangerous. So that's something we're constantly striving for, and not only that, but also standardizing the data that's collected as well, so that you can actually gain insights from it, and make suggestions with regards to patient care and patient treatments.
Okay, and James, as far as the automation side of things, what's FEMA thinking of there in terms of that and the intersection of IoT?
First off, our cloud is relatively new. It's only been up for about a year. AWS first, and then we brought Azure up with a full ATO in October. So we're still relatively immature, and we're always updating our architecture. I like to say that the cloud's not static. Nothing is ever done. We're always looking to update it and improve it. Even though we do have 24/7 monitoring in place of like a SOC and a NOC, we still do depend on RPA, robotic process automation, and we utilize a UiPath for that. And what it does is it helps us to get eyes on the most important data first. And then we're hoping in the future to move towards a machine learning aspect where if RPA picks up certain important things, there's an automatic response to that threat, shutting ports, whatever it might need to be. And then, an actual capacity to learn from those threats as well. We're heading in that direction. We're just starting to utilize RPA. We're not really using it in security right now. We're using it more in finance, believe it or not. But budgeting on the side of disasters is a huge issue as well. But that's our plan. Our plan is to start using RPA for most of our automation, and then to increase that and incorporate machine learning in time.
Okay, great. Exciting stuff. Alyssa, I think it's probably time for our second poll question. If we can get that ready for everyone, please. How familiar are you with your agency's strategies for securing the hybrid cloud? People are really thinking this one through, it seems. Here we go. Moderately familiar, 51%. Not familiar at all, 26%. Kind of a mixed bag here. That is interesting. Yeah, I think to pivot the conversation here a little bit, because I think what you were all saying in various ways were just kind of some of the guidelines or the guardrails that need to be in place around IoT, just recognizing, this is a lot of information being beamed up here, and that there's, obviously some protections that need to be put on that data, and I obviously there's some real leaders in terms of, securing the data here. We were talking about CISA a moment ago. I'm curious, I imagine NIST, the National Institutes for Standards and Technology, have been contributing a lot of thoughts on this as well. Just tell me, how NIST has been a player in setting some of the guardrails around IoT and data.
They've, for us at least, they've definitely provided guidelines and a comprehensive sort of approach for us to factor in, with our strategy. Like I said, we're constantly balancing innovation with security. We pride ourselves on, being on the forefront of introducing these innovative technologies in order to, treat more patients. So they've done, been very helpful to sort of set those guidelines so that, we can help implement those while, not losing focus on the end goal, which is, to create those innovative treatments and get them to patients faster.
Okay, great. Happy to move on unless anyone else has any thoughts there on the NIST aspects of things.
Yeah, I just have one comment. The NIST actually has an 800-213, which specifically does tell us what the current requirement is for the federal government as far as the protection of IoT. It's relatively new, but it is quite a hefty baseline. So it's all out there. So, anything that we need to secure our networks, the information is out there. You just got to get your hands on it.
Okay. And I'm kind of curious here. We've been talking about, the use cases of IoT, your respective agencies, but, I'm kind of curious in terms of, the accelerating and expanding of IoT across government, what do you see as some of the barriers that need to be reconciled here? We were talking, of course, a moment ago about, the data security element of things, the civil liberties side of things, but what else pops up to you as things that agencies across the board really need to get right before this becomes more of a thing we see across the board here?
I think one of the major things is policy and governance that needs to be addressed first. You need to look at, once architecture is done, policy and governance should be second. We don't always eat our own dog food on that one because sometimes we need to get the solution out as fast as possible because it's filling a dire need. But I cannot stress how important policy and governance is when you're introducing something like IoT and the utilization of hardware and software over IoT.
Yeah, and we kind of are thinking the same thing as well, because especially within the past 2 years in COVID-19, it was sort of full steam ahead on trying to find a cure, trying to find possible treatments, and so that part of it wasn't neglected a little bit, and so now we're taking the steps to set up that governance and so that we do have a path forward.
No, I agree with everybody. I mean, you have to understand the capabilities and the vulnerabilities of everything you put together and then put the right parameters in place for their usage, right? Because there's always those unintended consequences that you get yourself into when you start doing these things, especially when we roll them out quickly in a emergency situation. And then we find out later the problems that are there and have to go back and put those governance and policies in to ensure that we don't trip up again. So totally agree.
Excellent. All right. And just kind of a follow on to that, recognizing that you all three have some really exciting use cases, it seems, in terms of, IoT. What do you see as some lessons learned that other agencies could maybe, build on top of when it comes to, fielding IoT? What should they keep in mind here as far as a playbook,
I have
I guess?
a good one for that one. Regulations do exist. And even if you're not aware of them, they're still out there. I would make friends with NIST and CISA and places like that and realize that rarely are we reinventing the wheel. More than likely, somebody has been there, done it, and we have, at a federal level, started drafting some kind of policy and governance about it. Unfortunately, in FEMA, sometimes we kind of silo ourselves because we're responding to an incident, and we put procedure and policy in effect and then find out that it doesn't meet the requirement of NIST or CISA or executive order or whatever, zero tolerance. And then we have to go and kind of backwards engineer our solution, which we've already been utilizing. I hate to say it, but when do we find out that it's not good? Usually during an audit, and that's not the good time to be finding out. So I would definitely say networking is a huge factor, and making sure you go to the sources.
Awesome. Stacy, Tim, anything else?
Yeah.
Oh.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say what we've had success doing is following a zero trust based approach, when it comes to IoT, and specifically segmenting the IoT ecosystems within our network, so that they so none of those devices do have access to data that they shouldn't have, and then also just endpoint initiated security as well, so that certain instruments or certain automations can trigger other devices as well, so that you really follow that least privileged access as much as possible.
So I was just going to say simplistically, leverage the best practices that others have gone before you, right? So, the zero trust aspect is a perfect way to go. It's, what we need to do to move into these areas. There are regulations out there, and there are regulations out there for a reason. It's because, normally we have a regulation because somebody found a problem that needs to be fixed and regulated, right? So, those are the kinds of things that I would say that we need to move at the speed of relevance, but we also have to make sure we take enough time not to trip ourselves up and get ourselves in a situation that's going to cause us problems down the road. So it's a fine line, right? And with government, we find ourselves in a world of bureaucracy that oftentimes takes us far longer than we would hope. And, our public partners can move a lot faster in their companies doing things than we can, because they aren't bound by the regulations, because they don't hold the position of public trust like we do. So, that's another thing, is if you can find an instance in industry where these things have been used and have been successful, and we can evaluate how those have worked, then we can leverage those best practices as well, right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel just because we're the government. We just have to make sure that when we use the wheel, we do it the right way and we don't harm anybody in our public based on what we've done.
All right, all good points there. Well, hard to believe, but we are running out of time here. The half hour is just about over here. So I'll give everyone just a quick 1 minute lightning round here to give us some closing sentiments, or, if you'd rather just give me a better sense of where you see the future of IoT going. Stacy, we'll stay with you to begin with.
So I think the future of IoT is going to be huge. I think it's the natural progression for things. I think the thing that we've got to do is figure out how to effectively use it and manage it to make sure that we get the most out of it to benefit ourselves and our nation, right? National security and cyber and IoT are very important, and we need to make sure that we focus on that, because our adversaries are coming after us. I guess that's my DoD hat that keeps coming out loud and proud here, but we are in the midst of a cyber war. So we need to make sure that we protect ourselves and cover ourselves, but be as effective to stay, to maintain our superiority.
All right, no point in sugarcoating it. James, over to you. What's your closing sentiment you'd like to leave with everyone?
Something that, it's probably a known fact in all reality, but I just like to reiterate it. I don't know about people in the physical environment, but I find it's a whole lot easier to apply zero trust and all of the standards that we need in a cloud environment. It's faster, and we tend to be able to respond to things faster in the cloud. On top of that, the thing I like the most about IoT is actually a direct impact to logistics. 3 to 4 years ago, we would, whenever there's a disaster that we're expecting, we field equipment close to that area so that we can very quickly move it in to support whatever ends up happening. That could be, 20 giant trucks full of equipment, because it's servers, it's machine, computers, all kinds of stuff. Our footprint with that has dramatically reduced because of the use of mobile devices in an IoT environment. And that's great, because that means we can get where we need to go faster and lighter.
All right, and Tim, I think you'll get the final word here. Tell us what the audience should take away from this conversation.
No, we're looking to leverage IoT, just to automate reactions, possible assays and screens, just to derive potential cures faster as well, and to talk a little bit about what James said. There's using and leveraging the cloud within our IoT ecosystem, really allows us to analyze tons and tons of data that we already have that we, really didn't have any way to analyze before. So, could possibly point out potential, correlations or relationships between different compounds, different synergy or synergistic effects they might have on different, cell lines and biological profiles. And, we really, look forward to it really accelerating drug discovery development.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today. Everyone, please give our panelists a virtual round of applause for being so good with the topic here. And Alyssa, back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. That was a great panel, you guys. I loved it. So informative. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. So thank you guys all for joining us. Thank you again for Zoom for partnering with us on this summit. Thank you again for all of our panelists and our amazing keynote. And thank you again for joining us today. And we hope to see you at our next event. Before you leave us today, we do want to put up one last poll question. If you did answer all 5 polls, you are eligible for us to send you a CP credit. So we'll send it right to your email, no hassle. So go ahead and fill out that poll. We make it super easy here at ATARC. But that is all we have for today. So thank you so much. And we hope to see you again at our next event. Have a great day.